Recording. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know that the summer vacation is in full swing for you, and I hope that you're traveling and enjoying summer and enjoying the hot weather and just doing all the fun stuff there is no time for during your school year. But I'm also happy that you joined us for this essay writing workshop because I know that summer is all about fun and you're happy that your school just ended. But for you guys who just finished your third year of high school and are, thinking about applying to US universities, the summer is the time for your college application essays. So let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Hani. I am the Education USA advisor in the Fulbright Commission in Prague. And for those of you who don't know Education USA, and this is a live stream that you just stumbled upon, you can definitely reach out if your dream is to study in the United States. I am here happy to help. And I can go from just the school selection, also help with the scholarship opportunities and other things regarding studying in the USA. So today I have a special guest, Justin from NYU Abu Dhabi, and together, or he mostly, will talk about the essay writing because I know it can be a little hard. You are not used to writing essays as it requires the common application and, American universities and institutions in general. So I'm so happy to welcome Justin, and I'll leave the floor to him and he will walk you through the essay writing. Thank you for joining us, Justin.
Great. Thanks so much for the introduction. And thank you all for tuning in today. Hani mentioned that you're in the summer mode and maybe you're just thinking about having fun and this sounds like schoolwork. But I promise you, and I know you've probably heard this before, but this not only can be fun, this whole process of writing your essay, also it should be fun. I'll emphasize that several times as I go through this presentation because it really is something that is a process that you can go through. So let me go ahead and open up my slide deck here.
Great.
And just to introduce myself, I'm a senior outreach officer for NYU, particularly their campus in Abu Dhabi. I'm based in Europe, Istanbul, actually. So if you hear seagulls in the background, it's because it's almost 32 degrees and I have all the windows open. But my role as an outreach officer is basically as a kind of interpreter. So I visit high schools all across Europe and help students understand NYU, particularly the Abu Dhabi campus and this application process. And I also help admissions understand you as Czech students, as European students, your particular academic background. So I think the first thing I should mention, just to get the elephant to mention the elephant in the room, is that I did mention New York University, and I also mentioned Abu Dhabi. And so you may be wondering, okay, where is it? Is it New York or in Abu Dhabi? To make it even more confusing, we're actually located in 3 different cities. So NYU is a US university with 3 degree granting campuses that are in New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. So exact same university, exact same diploma, exact same degree, but each campus is a little bit different, kind of has a different vibe, has different courses, has different areas of study, has different sizes of the campus, different student populations. So it's a really unique global university in this sense. The campus that I represent in Abu Dhabi in particular is kind of like a global honors college. We bring students from over 120 different countries and no majority from any one part of the world. And they study on a campus where they have opportunities to spend time studying, of course, with their big international group of peers, but also spend time in all of these other cities. So it's a US education, but spent abroad around the world, and a really unique prospect. So if you're thinking about studying at a US university, but you also want to do some travel and have a very global experience, this is a really unique opportunity. So I encourage you to explore that. And that's about all I'll say so far. If you have questions at the end, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. But I want to go ahead and just dive into this process and describe how to take on the process of writing an essay. And lately, I've been finding that maybe the best way to explain to you what this essay is, what we're asking you to do, is actually to tell you what not to do. So this is in complete opposition then to probably a lot of things you've been asked to write in school before.
Mhm.
So this is not an academic paper. This is not an essay that you would write for your history class or biology class or something that you would do at school. It's also not a list of extracurricular activities. This should not be a CV.
Mhm.
This should not be just a list of bragging about things. We do want to hear that, but
Mhm.
not in this part.
Mhm.
And it's also not a letter of motivation. This is not the place to tell us how much you want to come to our university. We do also want to hear this. This is important, but this is not the place.
Mhm.
And finally, it really should not be anything that we can find somewhere else in your application. This process is really a chance to share something new. Tell us something new that we wouldn't know about you from just looking at the grades that you've received in class or the kinds of classes you took or the awards you received. It should also set you apart from other students who are applying. A lot of these US universities, including NYU, are highly competitive. That means we're really looking to see students who are standing out from the pack of applicants. So I always encourage students to imagine, you have your best friend or evil twin or doppelganger or whoever it is, someone who has the exact same grades as you, who did the exact same sport, did the exact same volunteering, and you're both applying to the same university.
Mhm.
Now, what are you going to talk about to set yourself apart from that person, to show how you're different, these different personal characteristics?
Mhm.
This should also, of course, show off your very best ability to express yourself in English. I've emphasized your here because this really should be your voice at the end of the day, not your favorite author or your older brother or sister who you think maybe writes better in English. We want to hear your voice come through here.
Mhm.
Also, this is a creative essay. So at the end of the day, it should be interesting. It should grab our attention. It should be engaging and memorable. So this is a chance to get a little bit more creative and it's almost like creating a self-portrait in a sense. This should be a fun process to kind of think about, who am I and how do I tell the world about who I am and my experiences and the kinds of things who make me who I am.
Mhm.
And then finally, it's a combination of both a good topic and a good approach. So there are two different things here. There's the topic or the subject that you're writing about, what the content of your essay will be. And there's also the approach, the style, or how you write about it. These are two really separate things that it's important to pay attention to. And I'll give you a few examples once we go in here. But just know that, it's possible to write in a boring way about something exciting and vice versa. So as you're figuring out what to write about, it's important to remember these two things. So for the next part of the presentation, I actually just want to give you a game plan. I want to give you 4 steps so that you can go through each one of these and be really well prepared to write a strong essay and submit it for the US university that you're applying to. And I do really want to emphasize US university here because, applying to some other European universities or UK universities, they are looking for other things. UK universities may be looking for, academic essays or something like that. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. But anyway, going on, the very first step is to explore the prompts.
Mhm.
So most universities will give you several different options to choose from. For NYU, we use the Common App, which means there are actually 7 different things that you can choose to respond to.
Mhm.
Other universities may have a different set or a smaller set. But my first advice to you is just to explore all of them.
Mhm.
Because I think for a lot of students, your first instinct is just to say, okay, number 3 looks good. I'll write my essay on this and write your essay and leave it at that, which is fine. Sometimes that can turn out to be a strong essay,
Mhm.
but you'll actually never know about any of the other things if you don't try them. So my advice to students is to look at all of those options and go ahead and brainstorm. Look at each one and say, okay, if I had to write my essay on this, what would I write about? What would I choose to write about? And go through the list and ask yourself, okay, which one of these is going to be, the most unique to me? If I chose to write about the school field trip that, everyone in my class did, will this really talk about me or just about my school or my class?
Mhm.
You also want to make sure that it's something that is telling something new. So if you do choose to write about, an extracurricular activity, are you giving us more context, more personal context about that activity than we can find in other sections of your application?
Mhm.
And what kinds of things do you want admissions to know about you? What is the message that you're trying to send? So hopefully after you've looked at these different ideas that you've brainstormed, you can pick 2 or maybe even 3 that you think are a good fit and go ahead and write an outline or an introduction for each of them. So if you're really kind of in the groove and you have started your introduction and you know how it's going to open up, go ahead and write that introduction. Or you can plan, you can set an outline. I think for most essays, most essays start with just three really good sentences. You have your introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So go ahead and see if you can write those and see, what is this scaffolding going to be? What is going to be the structure of my essay? And then come back to these essays again and back to these questions again and ask yourself, is this still unique and personal? Is it expressing the ideas about myself that I want to come across? What parts of this should I focus on? You'll also notice that there are several questions that are multi-part. So you want to make sure that that you're answering all of those questions and developing it. But hopefully after you've looked at these and started to develop that, you have an idea of what will really work well for your essay. And that third step is to go ahead and just write a full draft. Take that outline or introduction and turn it into a full piece of writing, and keep coming back to these questions, asking yourself if this is unique and personal, if you're sharing new things that we can't find elsewhere in your application. Is it bringing out, the personal characteristics that you want admissions to know? But also ask yourself, did I answer the question? I know sometimes when we get carried away and we're writing about ourselves, we can kind of forget, the point of the prompt and kind of get away from the question, which is fine. That's part of the process. And I would argue that, writing that way is more important than just answering the question, because that's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is not to have the very best answer anyone has ever written for this essay. It's really to use it as a touchstone to reveal more about yourself and who you are. So it's like they say about, the journey being as important as getting to the destination. That's kind of the same idea here, to use this as a way to explore. And finally, you also just want to make sure that it's well organized and clear and interesting. It's fine if your essay is complicated. Maybe you chose to write about something complex in STEM that's interesting to you. So it's fine if it's complex, but you do want to make sure that it's still clear and easy to read for a general audience. So you don't want to be overcomplicated, so that in most cases admissions will read your essay maybe 1.5, maybe 2 times. So you want to make sure that you're able to just deliver your message at once. So if it's overly complicated, that can make it a little bit difficult. But an example I've been using recently is several years ago, there was a student who wrote an essay in the form of a computer program. And I'm not a comp sci person at all, but I could completely follow where the student was going. I understood that, and I saw part of the student's personality there. This isn't to say that you all have to go write programs or something, write in the format of a recipe or something like that. But I got a sense of this, student's personality, and it was engaging, and I still understood it. It wasn't overly complicated. So you do want to make sure that it's engineering, or if it's about engineering or something complicated, that you make it in this clear way, and then you make it interesting to everyone, to a general audience. Which brings me to my final point, which is to get feedback. So edit, revise, and rewrite. Share your essay with the people in your school, with your EducationUSA coordinator, with your best friend, with your parents, and ask them all these same questions that you've been asking yourself from the very beginning. Is this interesting? Is this memorable? Does this really make you want to learn more about this story? Also, since these are people who know you, ask them, does this sound like me? If you found this essay and my name wasn't on it and you read it, would you know this is about me? Is my personality coming through? And you can also ask them the opposite question. Do ask them, if you didn't know me at all and you found this essay, what would you think about this person? What are the kinds of things you learn about this person from this essay? And this is all to say that, it's a way to make sure that you're saying what you think you're saying, that the things that you're trying to communicate come across. Of course, you also want to make sure this shows off your best ability to express yourself in English. So a little proofreading or, of course, spell check, these kinds of things, polishing is fine. But you want to make sure at the end of the day that it's still, in your own voice, that it doesn't get overcorrected or you're trying to write in a style that's unnatural to you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And finally, also ask them what's missing. When we're writing about ourselves, these things have happened to us, so we know everything already. So sometimes we'll tend to leave things out. So make sure that everything is just clear and flows together. And so hopefully after doing all of this process, you'll have a really strong essay to submit at the end. And I promise you, this is not a difficult thing to do. It just takes a little bit of time and reflection. Um, and you can go through these steps as you need. If you feel like you don't need as much step one, go ahead and skip on to second, third, or fourth step. But I promise this is a really fulfilling process to go through.
That's
For
really
the
cool.
next, yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
sure.
We do have
Yeah,
some
please do.
live viewers, so you guys who are watching, if
Okay.
you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. I'm looking at it right now, so we will be happy to answer any of those questions. And following up on what Justin said, we do offer an essay buddy program, and it means that I am so happy to pair you up with an English teaching assistant, which is a Fulbright grantee who comes here from the United States. He teaches at a Czech high school, and this guy or girl, I'll pair you up with him, and he is able to give you a feedback or some tips and tricks on your essay. So these are people who went through the college applications as well, so they know what they're doing and they can definitely help you. So if you are interested in this essay buddy program, let me know. I am so happy to pair you up. This is, of course, free of charge. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to get a native speaker to look at it as well.
Oh, that's so cool. That's really exciting to hear. That's a great opportunity.
Thank you. Okay.
Great. So for the next part of the presentation, what I want to do is just take you through two of the prompts and some examples.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go through all of these, but this is, all of the options that you have applying to the Common App. But I'll just take the first two
Mm-hmm.
and give you some examples. And I want to put you in the seats of reading these essays and thinking, okay, what if my friend came to me with this essay? What kind of advice would I give them? So for the first question is, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that's so meaningful, they
Mm-hmm.
believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story.
Mm-hmm.
So I have three examples here. Not all of them are 100% good. Not all of them are 100% bad. They're all, well, most of them are kind of in between or somewhere in there. And most of them are not real either. These are just caricatures we've made up.
Okay.
But for the first one, let's say we have a student who says, I am of Czech nationality, which means speak in this unique way. We have these unique traditions and eat these unique foods that I bet you've never heard of. So imagine if your friend came to you with this kind of essay, what kind of advice would you give them? Maybe, Hani, would you feel like jumping in if it's not putting
Sure.
you on the
For
spot?
me, there is a lot of repetition of the word unique, and it's very blank. I I would expect the first two or three sentences, as you mentioned, Justin, to be like pop, like this makes
Yeah,
me want to read again, and it doesn't do that for me, unfortunately.
yeah, exactly. It's just really boring, just kind of stating the facts, very
Yeah.
monotone. Also, so far, the student has not really said anything about themselves. They've talked about, their culture.
Mhm.
But if it goes on this, it's kind of just like reading the Wikipedia article. We see all of these things, but we don't learn about the student. So
Yeah.
I think in examples like this, you want to make sure that you actually, um, you know, you include personal details, that you have a personal connection to the subject, and that the essay is about you.
Mhm.
Sometimes I see this same fault happen when students will write an essay about their grandmother, who was this amazing person and did all these fantastic things, and it's very inspiring and it's really interesting. But then I get to the end of the essay and I think, I know more about this student's grandmother than I do about the student.
Yeah.
So, perfectly fine to talk about these people and these big things, but make sure that like you're centered at the end of the day.
Yeah.
For the second example, we have a student who said, I want to study business, I excel in these classes, and I won these awards.
Yeah.
You can probably tell from the beginning.
Exactly. Like show rather than tell, honestly. Just show
Yeah.
examples. Yeah.
And this is all stuff we already know
Yeah.
from the
That's true. Yeah.
application.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's not adding new information. It just looks like a CV. So again, if I saw an essay about, why, this student had some experience and it made them want to study business and it's a part of their life and like part of the bigger scheme of things. Okay, that's fine to talk about that. but just kind of listing, what you excel at. This is not going to, it's a missed opportunity to just write
Mhm.
like that. And for option C, we have a student who said, I don't just listen to music, I'm an avid musicologist. Let me tell you about the opera of my life, and in particular, the last chapter, my jazz stage.
Mhm.
So I think this is a good example of what you were talking about before. Like, I want to read more. There's a
Mhm.
kind of hook here. I want to find out what that jazz stage is.
Mhm.
So this is, I think, I really have no notes on this one. I think it's pretty
Mhm.
straightforward. To use these kinds of literary techniques to pull in the reader is a great thing to do. To
Mhm.
draw on the attention and make them want to find out what's happening next.
Mhm.
I want to know what that jazz stage is.
Mhm.
There are some pitfalls if this were to continue on. I'm in the middle of the essay and I can't remember if I'm in the death metal or the gangster rap era and what's going on. It's all confused. And okay, maybe that's going a little too far. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, overall, I think this is a really great start and a good way to pull people in.
Mhm. Mhm.
For the second example, this is a pretty common essay prompt. I think across all universities, almost all universities have some version of this, asking about how you experienced failure and how you responded to it. And this is also one of those questions that has multiple parts, as you'll see here. So the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success.
Mhm.
Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you? And what did you learn from the experience?
Mhm.
So you see here that there are actually three different parts. The first is telling the story, what happened, and then quickly moving on to how did it affect how did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience?
Mhm.
The growing part of this. Um, So, for example, maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but the student said, I failed grade 11 math because I had a teacher who didn't know how to teach well. I want to study engineering, and I know I'll do better with a good teacher.
Uh-huh.
So, I want to flip the tables a little bit and ask you, okay, you're the university, and you get this essay.
Yeah.
What do you learn about this student?
He likes to complain a lot and he likes to just put the blame on other people rather than start with themselves. So
Right.
that's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
not taking responsibility for his
Yeah.
actions.
Mhm.
Yeah, probably also bad at math, and things. Well, maybe not necessarily. You never know, but
And
right.
that's
All
also
of these are
something,
negative things.
yeah, that's also something I am not sure I would put as a first sentence that I failed something, like I would
Yeah,
just not focus on the bad part of what happened. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a risky thing, to
Mhm.
start out. I failed grade 11 math.
Uh-huh.
But I think this is a good example of about topic and approach. So talking about failing, grade 11 math is probably not a positive topic. But
Mhm.
if you have a way to discuss this and what it brings out ends up being, a big positive. So if I saw this big statement at the beginning and thought, oh my God, why is the student telling us he failed grade 11 math? But then I read the essay and he said, this really happened in my school during the pandemic. We had a shortage of teachers. We didn't have a teacher, and we all struggled in math. But I made a study group, and I talked with the administration, and I won the math Olympiad next year. And I had this, big thing. Like that's a journey. That's a story there. That's a way you can talk about this, but still make it a positive thing and
Mhm.
make it engaging. So always remember that it's never just the subject alone. That's either good or bad. There are ways to turn these a little bit. I
Mhm.
think the next example kind of shows that a little bit. Um, she said, as I started my final lap in the pool, the entire crowd was cheering, including every other swimmer, all of whom had finished long before me and were grabbing their towels. If I set any records that day, it only could have been for the slowest time. But without my participation, my school could not have even qualified.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, same question again. What are the kinds of qualities you would learn about this student in reading their application or reading their essay?
For me, the writer is very humble, yet she recognizes her weaknesses, but it feels to me that she is a team player because she knows how important her participation was, even though it wasn't the best.
Yeah, that's a good point. That team player thing,
Uh-huh.
for most people probably in that situation, knowing that you're not going to win, you just want to like get your towel, get out of the pool. But we see that she kind of kept through it. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
all of those kinds of things jump out. And I also, just as a point of style here,
Mhm.
I like to mention that um, there's something really engaging about starting in medias res. Maybe you've heard about this in your language classes when you start the action, when you
Mhm.
start the story in the middle of the action. There's
Mhm.
something that pulls you into it right away and kind of forces you to immediately start imagining what's going on. I can,
Mhm.
probably for most of you, as soon as you started to hear that, you imagined a pool somewhere,
Mhm.
at a school that you used to go to or something, or at your school, you could smell the chlorine, maybe. But the idea here is that, when you write in this way, it pulls you into the story, and there's something that makes you really close to the reader and feel like you know them better. Like you can probably, after reading that, have a bit of an idea of what it would feel like to come in last swimming like that. And
Mhm.
so at the end of the day, these are the kinds of things that can really make your essay very personal and make this personal connection with the university and help them kind of see who you are, feel like they're having a conversation about you, getting to know you better. So not everyone has to do this, but if you are a writer, if you like writing in this way, this is something that can be really effective.
Mhm. So we have got two questions relating to these
Sure.
two topics. One of them says, why do you think, sorry, they're in Czech, so I'm translating on the way.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you think that they haven't changed the topic from last year?
So they actually haven't changed these topics in probably 6 or 7 years. A lot of these have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I think because they're kind of tried and true. They're questions that ask students to reflect and bring out big, kind of important things about character. So, how
Mhm.
you respond to failure, how you grow in certain situations, how you cope with being in different situations. So, things that deal with your personal characteristics
Mhm.
and not just academic ones. So, this kind of can serve to demonstrate how you would thrive on the campus, how you
Okay.
would fit into that particular environment. So
Okay.
I think it would be interesting to get a few new ones in, and also there is question number 7, which is choose your own adventure. You can just do your own topic, which I'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I think they've picked a few that are just kind of classic questions, and if you feel bored with them, totally fine. If you have another idea that kind of matches these, then by all means, write that essay.
That's great. Veronica is asking if you would recommend starting the essay with her favorite quote or if it's too cheesy.
Uh, I wouldn't say never, but it is pretty typical. That is one of those things that, unless you're going to do something really unexpected with it,
Mhm.
I would say avoid that.
Mhm.
Or if you're doing it in a way that is like starting a conversation or something, I could see that happening. But generally, unless you're going to do something that's really innovative with a quote,
Mhm.
I would find another way to include that quote or another way to start off with that. I think a lot of times, if you're writing the essay just because of that quote, then you might need to reflect a little bit more. So I would say it's not impossible, but it's usually not the place I encourage students to start.
Okay, okay. And sorry, Jakob, one more question. How long does this essay need to be?
So this is, last I checked, about 800 words. So it is short. It's about a page and a half.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you need to be pretty succinct in writing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Not as of now, but you guys
Okay, great.
keep posting. I'll read it when it's
Yeah,
time.
keep posting
Yeah,
them.
when it comes. Mhm.
So the last thing I'll talk about is the school-specific essay,
Mhm.
and this is a completely separate essay from the personal essay. Not all universities require this, but a lot of universities do have some version of this.
Mhm.
That's basically, why are you applying to our university? Why do you want to come to our university?
Mhm.
And the important things to remember here is that they should be unique to each university because each university is unique. This is not, the personal essay you can write and send to all of the universities. That's
Mhm.
general to all of them. But this should be really specific to the university you're applying to.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that you make it personal, that you're not just kind of repeating back what you've read about the campus on the website. That you're not saying, I want to come to your university because it's ranked number one in blah blah blah, and you're ranked number one in this, and all of that stuff, which is great. Those are valid reasons. But we already know we're ranked number one for whatever it is.
Yeah.
We're much more interested in knowing why we're ranked number one for you. What are the things that you feel like you couldn't do anywhere else, that you're applying? What are the things that you feel just make it such a good match? And since it is kind of like a love letter, and that it's your way of saying, okay, here are all the amazing things about you that I can't find anywhere else, and here are all the things about me that just fit into this, the things that I want to do on campus and the things that I'm looking for. Like, here's how we pair up. So when you write the response to this question, make sure that you're doing that, and again, just not repeating things back that you've seen on the website.
Okay.
And this is one example. I always like to include this example of one of our students, just because I think it's kind of a masterclass in how to answer this question. And of course, you don't have to use the same format or the same approach, but I'll just go ahead and read it. My high school history teacher taught us about the Cold War by sharing his experience of living in post-Soviet Russia.
Mm-hmm.
He taught us about European history by talking about his experience living in Paris. We learned about art history by hearing about the museums he had visited in Florence.
Mm-hmm.
I was in awe of the way he had learned about the world, and now NYUAD is my chance to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn about Ethiopia through a roommate from Addis Ababa.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn about China through a J-term class in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn about the marine environment while kayaking through the mangroves in Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
So in this short paragraph, the student has shown us that she really gets us. She knows that we're the opposite of the Zoom classroom, that we make students study abroad for 2 semesters and, spend J-terms in different places, that we have a J-term in Shanghai. Also that our student population is extremely diverse, that we intentionally place students with roommates who are from the opposite corner of the world from them when they arrive on campus. And also, less obvious things. Like, a lot of people hear Abu Dhabi or Dubai and they immediately will think of like steel and glass skyscrapers or camels and deserts and those kinds of things. But fewer people know that there's actually green places, there are green spaces around the city, and there's a national park filled with mangroves where you can take out kayaks close to campus. So, each one of these is just kind of a wink saying, like, I know you. These are the cool things that are really specific to you that are appealing to me. So, it doesn't have to be in this format, but I think just thinking in this way of, what are those things that really are different about who I am and different about this university and what makes them match, I think is a great way to approach this. So I want to go ahead, before I just open up the floor for questions, I want to give out some final tips. The first one is probably a really obvious one that you've heard a lot, but it's give yourself time. This is not the essay that you're going to write a night before, even a week before, probably even 2 weeks before your application is due. The summer is a great time to do this reflection, do writing exercises, and kind of explore these different prompts and see what you want to write. A lot of times students will ask, should I go and like research, other college essays, or, read the top essays that got these students into Harvard, or should I work with ChatGPT to come up with like a winning essay strategy? And my answer is just, moderation in all of these things. If you feel like you want to read example essays or you want to use ChatGPT for inspiration, certainly not writing your whole essay, but if you want to use these, make sure that it's a way of exploring and just kind of looking for inspiration to set you on your way, and not as just a quick solution to writing your essay. Which brings me to the next point about finding your own voice. This really should be should kind of have your fingerprints on it. Obviously, it should be in your best English, but it shouldn't be like overly, it should be correct, but don't feel like you have to use big words that you don't quite understand or something that is unnatural to you. If there's some misspellings or misunderstandings here or there, it's totally fine. This should be something that is created by you. I think the best essays have this kind of sense of, I don't know if you've heard of this concept before, but this wabi sabi, in Japanese aesthetics, they have this idea of, this kind of imperfection of and kind of handmade things, that nothing is ever perfect, nothing is ever complete. And this essay really is kind of that way. It shouldn't be so polished that, we don't hear your voice, or it doesn't have, a single misused word or something like that.
Mhm.
You should really just be something, it should be something that you create. And I think that's something that obviously, if you're copying someone else's essay for inspiration, or if you're using ChatGPT, none of that is there. And it's really obvious, it's not, and again, it's not like we're using AI detection or any of those things. This entire application is on the honor system. But it's one thing that I can say right away, this kind of like handmadeness of an essay
Mhm.
doesn't come through when you use something else other than your own voice. So again, it's not a difficult thing. Just take the time to do that and have fun. If you find yourself getting tense and stressing out over this, stop and remind yourself why you're doing this, what the goal of this is. Because even if you don't end up going to the university or whatever it is, this is something that you will have to do for the rest of your life. Explaining to other people who you are and what's important to you, what makes you you, all of those things. So sit back, enjoy the process, and use it as a time to explore. So that's my advice to you, and I wish you all the very best with your application writing. Also, I'll leave my contact details here.
Mhm.
If any of this excited you and you're interested in applying to the university or want more information, my details are here. Unfortunately for me, I no longer cover Czechia. My colleague visits Czechia, but I can put you in contact with her, and we're here to help you through this process. So if you have questions, please do feel free to contact us.
Thank you, Justin. We do have some questions. So
All right, great.
one question, and this girl is asking that she decided to write on a topic about overcoming a challenge. And she wanted to write about her overcoming an anorexia. And her question is whether this shows a weakness, and does it seem like a red flag to the reader or not?
So that's a good question. I think there are a lot of topics like this dealing with like physical and mental health,
Mhm.
that can be a little bit difficult.
Mhm.
And so usually my first advice to students is, you know, if you feel uncomfortable doing it, or you have reservations about it,
Mhm.
then maybe this isn't the time to use that as the topic.
Mhm.
I'm not saying at all that you can't. It's perfectly fine to do it,
Mhm.
but you want to make sure that that you're writing in a way that will achieve these goals that I've talked about. So if you're talking about overcoming this difficult um, physical and psychological hurdle in your life,
Mhm.
and you can do it that in a way that shows all of these positive characteristics, but you don't feel like it's something that will again like set off red alarms, or bring kind of your current um, any current issues up. Then I think that's totally fine. So it's up to you. I mean, like all of these things, ultimately it will be your judgment. But I think in a lot of things, if students talk about, maybe they had some kind of minor criminal history, or they had, something else that's just a little bit on the fence. I'm not saying that you can't write about it, but that this might not be the particular time to talk about it. So at the end of the day, it's up to you. Write the essay, share it with your friends, get this feedback. And if they feel like it's strong and it's reflecting positive things, then by all means, you should feel free to use it.
Okay. Oh, she also says thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
welcome.
And there is a question coming from a student athlete, I'm guessing, because he says that uh, he spends his free time doing sports. So he was thinking about writing about a challenge, which was an injury. But he thinks that that's something that every student athlete writes about. So is that something you like the universities want to read again, or should he just change the topic completely?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty common one. That's pretty, when you look at the things, list of things that are unique, that's definitely not one of them.
Yeah.
Again, I will never completely bar any essay, because I've read injury essays before. I'm sure that
Mhm.
were compelling and interesting.
Mhm.
So I would say, yeah, go through this process and make sure that it accomplishes those things. But definitely take the option to look at some other stuff first. That's
Mhm.
the reason I encourage students to look at a few of the other things before starting, before you box yourself into talking about one topic, just because it is so easy to fall into that trope. So it's, again, this does not mean that your injury wasn't, as traumatic for you, an important thing and character building. By all means,
Mhm.
those are important things that happen in our lives.
Mhm.
But this might just not be the opportunity.
Mhm.
I think the same thing anytime I read essays that are about like some version of stage fright. Like I was really afraid to go and make the speech, but then my friend told me to do it and I did it and I was happy and I learned that you should always try things you're afraid of. Those kinds of things tend to get really, really similar. So if you're writing these things, especially that, overcoming something, if it's just like I was nervous or like I didn't want to, or those things, that's not really quite as, the message at the end of the day is really not as strong as and internally I know how big that is.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things are big inside, and again, that's not to say that they're not important. I definitely wasn't an extrovert when I started doing a lot of public speaking growing up, and it's something I do a lot now, so those are important things, but maybe just not the most like compelling things for the personal essay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There is one more question. It seems to me that Americans are all about happy, happy, joy, joy. So should my essay be very optimistic or can I write about something sad?
That's a really great point. I think there is this reputation of this kind of energy and always being kind of like absurdly optimistic. By all means, no, it does not have to be happy or super positive. You can talk about difficult things in your life. Some of the best essays I've read have been about difficult things. So by
Mhm.
all means, if you have something that's a part of your story that's important,
Mhm.
do tell it. I would say the only caveat I would give for something like that is to make sure that it's not doesn't turn into a sob story like, oh, woe is me, my life is so hard, all these things happen, like please
Mhm.
let me into the university. As long as you're not doing that,
Yeah.
then it's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
I would say any range of emotions, what you feel when you sit down to tell the story, those are all completely valid.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, thank you. Now there is a question about these additional school-specific essays. So this girl is asking how many of these school special or additional essays does the school usually ask? If it's one, two, three, and how long are they?
So that will really depend on the university.
Mhm.
For NYU, we only have one additional essay, and it's entirely optional, so you don't have to do it. It will not affect your application negatively if you choose not to submit it. There are other schools that may require two separate ones, and they'll be completely different. So it's really up to each university.
Mhm.
If you're applying through the Common App, you'll actually see in their tab, it will list whatever additional questions that they have. So that can be one of the difficult things if you're applying
Mhm.
to a large number of universities, is that oftentimes they will have additional ones. I don't think I've seen more than two very often. It's usually just one, and a lot of them are optional. But as you're shaping up your list, do look at those requirements and
Mhm.
see what they ask for.
That's great. And I see a last question, and this gentleman, he apologizes because he wasn't here in the beginning, but he was thinking about applying to NYU. So this is not essay related. And he's asking whether he can spend one semester, no, sorry, 1 year at like the American campus, 1 year in Abu Dhabi, and 1 year in Shanghai, if that's possible.
Great question. So yes, you can spend time at the other campuses.
Hmm.
It will depend on what program you apply to.
Hmm.
But if you apply to the Abu Dhabi campus, we have it set up. We have the curriculum set up so that all students have the opportunity to study abroad for at least one semester,
Hmm.
one full semester. They can also choose to spend they can apply for a second full semester. It's not automatically granted.
Hmm.
The first semester abroad is more just general. Like I want to go to Paris because I've always wanted to go to Paris and like work on my French. The second semester could be needs to be a little bit more grounded and say, I'm studying, this particular thing in public health, and I want to spend a whole semester in Accra in Ghana.
Hmm.
And then in addition to that, we also have January terms or J terms because they take place for 3 weeks in either January or June,
Hmm.
and you just take one course, but you take it every day for 3 weeks. So it's just really intensive. So, for example, at our campus in Florence, we have a course called The Miracle of Florence, where
Mhm.
basically you're just swimming in the Renaissance. You know, you go there and live on the campus, but go to the museums and visit all the historical sites and just really have this intensive time studying this one specific subject.
Mhm.
There's also one in Sydney on coastal urbanization, where you go and spend 3 weeks in Sydney and study the impact of the urban environment on the coastal environments, but also study like indigenous, you know, preservation techniques and things like this. But you really, you know, just do a deep dive into that subject.
Mhm.
So all in all, most students at NYU Abu Dhabi end up studying in 4 or 5 countries by the time they graduate. Actually, if you go to YouTube and just search NYU Abu Dhabi countries, every year the seniors go and like list all the places that they've been visiting over the time. Again, because Abu Dhabi is probably like it's I'm trying to think from Prague, it's probably a 6 or 7 hour flight maybe, but it's
Mhm.
also a 6 hour flight from Bangkok. So you're literally like in between these different parts of the world. So I'll see students like taking Fly Dubai, cheap tickets to Zanzibar for spring break, or like going home with their, you know, roommate to, you know, Buenos Aires or something like that over break. So students, because of this global connection, end up spending a lot of time at the other campuses.
That's really cool, and I'm really excited. So I don't see any other questions as of now, but you guys feel free to post them later. Once you watch it, I'll come back to this live stream and I'll either myself or I'll send it to Justin and we will answer those questions. Thank you so much for watching. Like there were so many people with us, and thank you for those wonderful questions. I hope that it's a little bit more clear to you, like how to start, what are the tips, what are some good examples, bad examples. Don't be afraid to use ChatGPT. I know you guys do, but just don't copy paste. Okay, I'll see it. The people at the university will see it. So make it your own. You are special, even though you don't see yourself as being special. If you don't know what to write about, schedule a consultation, and I'm happy to ask you various questions to see what are the topics or what are um, the life events that you can talk about. So, Justin, thank you so much for introducing
Thanks so much for
NYU.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope that more people apply to NYU Abu Dhabi or other NYU schools all around the place. And I hope those essays are worth reading. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. I look forward to it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.